So wonderful to have you here. I have the honor of introducing Dr. Ferguson. Dr. Ferguson is the owner and managing director of DJ Ferguson's Associates, LLC, serving Northeast Wisconsin with life care planning and care management services. The team specializes in helping people navigate the challenges brought on by aging, chronic illness, disabilities, or a sudden unexpected medical crisis, especially when family isn't available. Working with his team, they provide an independent, detailed assessment of an individual's specific situation and implement recommendations for tackling their challenges, making it possible to see a way forward. Dr. Ferguson received his MD and completed an internal medicine internship at the University of Texas Health Science Center at San Antonio, followed by a residency in anatomic and clinical pathology from New York University and cytopathology fellowship from University of Iowa Hospitals and Clinics. He practiced medicine in Milwaukee for 20 years before moving to Northeast Wisconsin and joining the faculty at Medical College of Wisconsin, Green Bay. Dave is certified by the Society of Certified Senior Advisors and the National Strength and Conditioning Association. He is also a certified heart math practitioner, providing coaching to clients and their caregivers. Please help me in giving a warm welcome to Dr. Ferguson.
So welcome, and thank you very much. I want to thank Joe Compton for inviting me back this year. I've been at this conference for a number of years and have the opportunity to speak a little bit about life care planning in the past, and that's the idea of, you don't need a plan for getting older, right? You're going to get older regardless. But like planning in other situations, you often have more options when you start thinking about what's coming ahead. And I'll get into a little bit later about how I got involved in that. But today what we're really going to talk about is mindfulness-based interventions in healthcare, so mindfulness-based practices. Have you heard of that term before? A lot of people shaking their head, right? How about a show of hands? Yeah, it's really amazing to me. It's really interesting. I think in 2021, there was a survey of individuals with Parkinson's. They surveyed 5,000 individuals, I think. And I think 39%, or close to 40%, practiced some type of mindfulness-based intervention. What's really interesting to me about that, the very first large kind of, or systematic review of mindfulness-based interventions in Parkinson's didn't occur until 2017, right? So individuals have adopted this without a lot of research behind it. And I wish I could stand up here and say that mindfulness-based interventions have been thoroughly researched and shown to be effective in Parkinson's, but the studies have been very, very small. You'll see studies of 20, 29, 30 individuals. And so I think we're behind the curve in terms of taking a look at mindfulness-based interventions and how it can help, especially in Parkinson's. It has been applied. We have looked at that in other areas, cancer, chronic pain, heart disease. So some other conditions, researchers have looked at mindfulness-based interventions, and I think the message is that it does have usefulness, and we're going to talk a little bit about that. Before we jump into that, mindfulness-based practices are really, they span a broad range of type of practices, and today we're going to focus on one or two in particular that I'm going to kind of walk you through. But it's everything, in my mind, everything from the tradition of the contemplative prayer all the way up to various types of meditation practices. And really the whole key to this, the idea of this, is that we take some time to be aware of what our thoughts and feelings are without passing judgment. In the simplest of terms, that's what it really means to me. So before we jump into this, before we kind of get into this, I really wanted to, this is National Poetry Appreciation Month. And so I think there's a couple things about this poem or others, or the message to me is to find joy in things that are simple, to find, again, finding joy in the simplest of things. You don't have to look to the big, grand things to find joy. And the other thing, this is just the first 4 lines of this poem, but the other thing about this poem is that the message to me is about the connectedness of all things, right? We are all connected, and we are connected to everything. And sometimes we don't always feel that. We may feel like that we're alone, and we are facing this huge problem with loneliness in the United States and in our communities. And it's interesting that the more people use social media, the studies suggest, especially younger people, the more likely they are to feel alone. And part of that is this idea of comparison being the thief of joy. I don't know if you've heard that expression attributed to Teddy Roosevelt. I don't know if he actually said that. But the idea that you compare your situation to others is a constant. That's one of the things that can sometimes make it difficult for us. So again, we'll move on here. So we got started a little bit late, so I'll try to move along. But you'll see some images I have of nature and the natural world. And there's tremendous, I find tremendous joy and satisfaction in the natural world, because that's a place where I can feel connected. And it can be as simple. The other day I pulled into the parking lot and I just took 30 seconds and I noticed the sparrows were pulling the seeds off the blades of grass, right? Just appreciating that that is happening around us, again, can bring comfort and connectedness in a world where we are torn in so many different directions. I had an experience where I have this, again, because I practice, I was having a particularly rough day, and so one of my things I tell myself is I'm going to take the long way home. In the Milwaukee area, that made me go like going up to Good Hope or something. But where I live, instead of taking the road between Casco and Luxembourg, if you've been up in that area, I'll drive along Highway U along Lake Michigan. And I was feeling particularly rough one day, just feeling in the work that I do, and particularly stressed. But I know that, and I feel that, and I know when that happens. I took the long way home, and as I was driving slow, appreciating a pair of bald eagles that were locked in their death spiral mating thing, if you've ever seen that on National Geographic, right in front of my car. 100 yards in front of my car, the spiraling eagles fell maybe about 100 feet off the ground. They broke apart and took off, right? I say that and I think about that because in my mind, if I hadn't known I was having a hard time and I hadn't done something about it, I would have missed that opportunity to see something spectacular. And that's all around us all the time, and even it's in simplest forms. We just have to be aware and connect to that. So before we get into this, I want you to get the very first thing, give you an idea of what we're going to talk about. I want you just to settle into your chair, right? Feel your feet on the floor. And it's helpful if you don't practice this a lot, or if it's helpful even now, is to close your eyes. We get so much input comes in. We're very visually dominant, right? Our vision is probably our primary sense. So closing your eyes immediately takes a lot of distraction. So if you find yourself in a stressful situation, preferably not driving, you just close your eyes. That eliminates a lot of the input. Feel the pressure of the floor on your feet, and then just kind of settle into your chair, and then sit upright a little bit. I like that reference this morning to the string kind of pulling your head up towards the ceiling. So you're still alert. I don't want you to fall asleep. Feel the pressure of the back, the chair on your back, and just become aware, perhaps, of what your day has been like up to this point. Were there challenges? Did you have some difficulties? Was it hard getting here? What are the thoughts and feelings that are passing through your mind? And just become aware of what they are. At this point, it helps to take a couple of deep breaths. Really nice deep breath in, and then prolong the exhalation, or prolong the out breath. Do a couple more of those. Nice deep breath in. Exhale. And one more. Nice deep breath in. And then exhale. At this point, transition into just letting your breath happen. The great thing about using your breath as a point of awareness or concentration is it's going to always be with you. And then just become aware of whatever thoughts or feelings you may be having. And at this point, there really isn't anything to do. That's one of the nice things about this in a frantic, hurried world where there's a lot of demands on us. You're not trying to relax. I often hear sometimes people say, well, it's not working. Well, you're getting it wrong. You know, you don't have to do anything. The point here is just to become aware of where you are and what's passing through your mind without judgment, without creating a to-do list, without thinking about tomorrow or yesterday. See if you can follow that rhythm of your breath, and when the thought comes in, and I didn't say if, but when the thought comes in, start over. Just begin again. Back to the breath. Focusing your awareness and concentration on what's going on in the room, my voice, the pressure of the chair, your breathing. As you settle into this, I want you to think of somebody that you may know casually. Maybe it's somebody at the grocery store who helps you, that's familiar to you. Somebody in the clinic that frequently helps you. A neighbor. Could be your care partner. You can visualize them, bring them into your mind's eye. And now I want you to send them really a heartfelt wish for them to be well. You can use the terms I'm going to use. You can make up your own. If you have that person fixed in your mind, send them well wishes. May you be well. May you be loved and cared for. May you find courage. May you be happy. May you find strength. May you find acceptance. And you can repeat those terms, but the idea here is to really send them heartfelt well wishes. And then if you've been particularly tough on yourself, you can send the same thing to yourself. May I find courage. May I find acceptance. May I be loved and cared for. Okay, now bring your attention again and awareness. You can open your eyes. So just kind of bring yourself back into this room. Any thoughts about how things might have changed from you from the time you started till the time you opened your eyes? Any comments?
More relaxed.
Calmer?
Yes.
Relaxed? Peaceful?
I gotta cut the grass.
Like you just cut the grass? lighter feeling. Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting to say cut the grass. There's a thing, my dad, and I'll show you, I got a picture, but my dad introduced me to Marcus Aurelius, one of the Stoic philosophers, when I was in high school, actually. And Marcus Aurelius has there is a Stoic last time meditation. And it's interesting, a lot of times for me, mowing the grass is a chore. You know, I got to get it done. It's one more thing on my to-do list. One of the last times I mowed the grass in the fall, I approached the grass, since you mentioned it, I approached the grass as this may be the last time I mow the grass. I won't forget that experience. The sun was dappled coming through the trees, through what's left of the trees, the smell, it was just incredibly relaxing, meditative process of mowing the grass. I can tell you, I just found some joy, and what brought that on was the idea that there's a last time for everything. The last time you may go skiing, the last time you see a loved one, the last time you drive, there is a last time for almost everything. And when I approach things like that and do that last time meditation, it brings an awareness and a freshness to something that I've done hundreds of times. So, sorry I got distracted, but the mowing the grass made me think about that. So, you're right, and there's a reason this works every single time, and because we're hardwired. When you take those deep breaths, our respiratory system and the way it's connected to our brain is hardwired. Your heart rate slows and your blood pressure drops. And the signal from your heart to your brain changes the way your brain works. And this is one of the reasons why, if you've ever been in a situation where you're flustered, you're running late, where are your car keys, you can't find them, you think more clearly when you're in a state just like you're in right now, in terms of making decisions and problem solving. All those things get better when you drop down the anxiety and the stress. And so we're going to talk a little bit more about that. So we'll get into just a little background in terms of how I got involved with this whole idea. This is the laboratory at Columbia Hospital in the East Side. Anybody familiar with Columbia Hospital in the East Side? Right? That was the first job I had outside of my training, was working at Columbia Hospital. I since moved to but I understand it's no longer there, which was really sad for me. I felt a loss hearing about that because that was my first job. I swear this is not what the lab looked like when I worked there, right? This was a state-of-the-art lab in the 1920s in the hospital. And I keep this picture in my office to remind me of how far we've come in terms of being able to help people. But there's still a lot of things that we need to do. But I was introduced to mindfulness interventions by a cardiologist at Columbia Hospital 25 years ago. And at the time, it was really new research in terms of how this kind of process you just went through can be beneficial to people. And I started practicing then, partly because of what I had experienced personally. That was my dad when he enlisted in 1942 after he graduated from high school. He served in the South Pacific in the Navy. And that's my mom when she graduated from high school. My dad died suddenly, and it was completely devastating to me. I just realized there was a lot of other things going on, but I was completely lost and really recognized I just did not have the skills to really cope with this kind of complicated grief. So I got into this. It was like, they say you bloom where you're planted, or there's various expressions, but my grandmother used to say, I latched onto mindfulness practices, like my grandma would say, like a duck on a June bug. I don't know if anybody's heard that expression or if that's a Southern thing, but I just became really intensely interested in the stress response and how our bodies respond to stress and what we can do to try to recover from that. Fast forward 25 years later, I was sitting in my office. I had just launched my service. My brother gave me a call, and he said he found my mom on the bathroom floor. I talked to her on the phone, and she was having a stroke. And of course, all the things go through your mind. Here's a crisis. Booked my airfare, jumped on the plane, hoping for the best, and then I got down there and recognized that this was not going to be good. I talked to the neurologist. strokes in multiple parts of the brain. I got there in time for her she was conscious, she was aware, but she was having more and more difficulty. And then over the next 3 days, my mom went into hospice, and my mom passed over that period of time. It was a completely different experience for me because the focus was not on so much on my loss, but on gratitude and appreciation for what my parents did for me. And so, my mom, I had my hand on her chest as her last heartbeat, and just periods of overwhelming joy and sadness going back and forth between that experience. So bookends, really. Completely lost as what to do when my dad passed, relatively sudden. Completely different experience for my mom. And the memories of that experience with my mom, and it was really both of my parents essentially passing at that time, just confirmed to me how a lifetime of really of all that training, all that time of practice and meditation prepared me for this event. I'm not saying that you need a lifetime of that kind of experience. You can start at any time, but I'd like to stand up here and say that the science, corroborates everything I'm saying, but I'm partly sharing a personal experience with you about the kinds of things that mindfulness practice can bring into even the most challenging, difficult situations that you're in. So why does this matter? We're going to talk a little bit about that today. Techniques to increase awareness, practicing gratitude, appreciation, and kindness. So I hope you're in the right session. By now, it's too late if you miss the others. But I like this word dis-ease, right? This idea that stress and dis-ease go together in the sense that stress makes all these other things worse. And in fact, fatigue, chronic pain, insomnia, irritability, headaches, all these things are harder. And in fact, the symptoms that are reported with Parkinson's, the primary, when caregivers are surveyed for Parkinson's, one of the burdens, maybe you can tell me if this is true for you if you're a caregiver, but one of the things that contributes the most to the burdens in Parkinson's are really the neuropsychiatric symptoms that the physicians were talking about this morning: the anxiety, the depression, the apathy, the psychosis. All those things are made worse. Individuals with Parkinson's report that all of those symptoms get worse with stress. And as the physician was talking about, when I went to medical school, Parkinson's was a movement disorder, and it was the motor symptoms that were emphasized. But in the quality studies that they do for folks with Parkinson's, it's the non-motor symptoms that are often the things that contribute most to the poorer quality of life. And so anything that we can do to lessen the stress response is a bonus for the caregivers. And the burden on the caregivers is tremendous in terms of the risks of burnout. And most of my clients have dementia, and I have some clients with Parkinson's that I help. And I see the tremendous burden that happens with caregivers. So the ability to develop some resilience is so important. And these are old studies because this is what drew me into this. And again, more recently, researchers are looking at this, but this again was an older study, and they looked at almost 5,000 middle-aged individuals. And they scored them based on how well they could manage their emotions. So at one end, I don't know who these people might be. I'm thinking of Pope John Paul or somebody who's way at the end, who is incredibly effective in managing their abilities to, if they're angry, to change that, right? Your abilities to regulate your emotions, highly developed, not to carry anger. And then they looked at people who are lowest at the scale. So you may know some of these folks. They're still talking about the bad meal they had 3 weeks ago, right? They can't, they're angry. They're welcome to share the latest bad thing that's happened. Somebody just gave me it's been a little while since I was here, and so I took the wrong you know, I don't know, these big freeways. I'm out in the country now, but I took the wrong lane. Someone's honking their horn at me, and then they gave me a obscene gesture. And I was just trying to get over in the other lane, right? It's like I didn't really do anything, right? That person's going to, you know, that was enough to get them so angry. I'm sure I ruined their morning for how long, right? If they're at the bottom of the scale, and then you have somebody who's really good at it at the top of the scale, when they looked at those individuals, they followed them out for 15 years, which is remarkable. That's a long time in a medical study to be able to do that kind of work, right? And they found that the people at the top of the scale were 50 times more likely to be alive than the people at the bottom of the scale. And that makes sense, because people who have a harder time regulating their emotions, they're more likely to self-medicate probably, they're more likely to take risks, they're less likely to go to the physician. I mean, there's lots of reasons why that might happen. But emotional regulation, self-regulation, our ability to recognize the emotions that we have and do something about it is foundation. It's at the core of every foundation. It's our relationships. How do we talk to people? How do we take care of ourselves? It's critical to everything. It's the foundation of health and wellness. It's how well we deal with emotions. And unfortunately, anxiety has kind of run to the top of, I was just talking to the principal of one of the schools in Green Bay, and he was interested, if the students, med students at all, are interested in researching anxiety in young people, he's all for that. He would love to have people look at that. Anxiety is one of the #1 things that physicians deal with. They say between 70 and 90% of doctors' visits to the physician have some kind of anxiety-related component in it, right? So it's a huge thing. And unfortunately, I'm not bashing healthcare systems, but oftentimes I've seen this now that I go to doctor's appointments, one of the first things that's offered sometimes is a prescription, right? And benzodiazepines as a big class, incredibly beneficial. They can be really helpful for somebody who's in acute grief crisis or something's going on. But long term, was almost it was 75 million prescriptions in 2013. It has come down because we recognize putting older people on benzodiazepines increases the risk for falls, interferes with other medications, but we still are very prone to put people on anxiety medications as one of the very first things. And hopefully that is changing. This is one of my great nieces, you know. And I always ask, I've shown this picture a lot, and I got permission. She signed a release, right? So, what do you think the problem was?
She didn't get her way.
It's right every single time. Everyone always nails it. She couldn't have candy for breakfast, right? But the thing is, my niece told me that within, you know, the next thing she's out playing with her brother, right? Her ability, you see that in children, right? They don't necessarily get stuck. They're like this or they're crying, but then they're off playing, right? They're much more flexible in terms of being able to modulate that. Now, as we get older, we get more and more stuck. It gets harder and harder to make that shift in how we handle things. And so I just like this picture because our resilience when we're a caregiver, when we're in difficult situations, we really have to be able to adapt to stress, adversity, trauma, and challenge. And I show this picture as from HeartMath that show this picture. I think it's a little bit busy, but I use this as an example of every minute of every day you're somewhere on this map. And perhaps even when you're asleep, I'm not sure. Somewhere on this map, you're experiencing some kind of emotional part of your life. And one of the things I found most valuable when I first was introduced to this is that the draining or depleting emotions, I grew up thinking a lot of those things were bad. Like you're not supposed to be angry at your brother, right? How many times did you hear that, right? Well, he just stole all the money out of my bank. That's why I'm mad at him, right? I mean, there's a reason I was angry with my brother, and it was legitimate. But oftentimes, we're told we're not supposed to be sad. Someone told me the other day, it's like, you know, your husband's been gone for a year, you know, like, not paraphrasing, but like, you should be over that, right? So that's just, you know, sadness is a legitimate part of our life. It's there for a reason. And, you know, we can be frustrated. we can get resentful. We can be angry and we can be anxious. The problem is when we get stuck there. And our ability to move over into the other part of the map is really what's critical. And the reason why this has an impact on our health is because, and you hear a lot about cortisol now, the stress hormone, it's not meant to be up all the time. It comes up in the morning, helps you get going, but then it needs to fall back down and it needs to fluctuate in a rhythm throughout the day. And when you're stressed and you're pegged over on the cortisol side, the cortisol is a hormone that we need. It helps us respond, again, to stress. It's essential. If you don't have it, you're going to get in trouble. But again, it's not meant to be up all the time. And so it's our ability to move to the other side, to find contentment, love, appreciation. Those things are really, that's the big challenge, and that's one of the things. The exercise that you performed just for 5 minutes this morning, that's one of the ways to make that shift. And the thing about that, if I were to hook you up onto some equipment, I could see the physiologic response carry over into the next couple of minutes, into the next 5 minutes, right? So the benefits that you get immediately from practicing that mindfulness technique carries over into the next period of time. And so the idea is to repeat that throughout the day, right? If you wait until 8 o'clock at night before you go to bed to do that, you've missed all those opportunities earlier in the day to kind of get to tap on the brake, to get that little bit of reset that you need. And I like this picture too, because what we know now for decades, we've been talking about heart health, and the things that are good for your heart are good for your brain. And stress is tough on the brain, especially the memory centers of your brain. Having that cortisol always there is really hard on the part of the brain where you lay down memories, the hippocampus. Prolonged cortisol without that periodic fluctuation that we have is neurotoxic. So, and again, heart rate variability. When I started reading a lot about this in the mid-90s, when again HeartMath came out with a lot of this early research, I think there were less than 24 articles in the mid to late 90s on heart rate variability. Now it's on wearable technology. It's on. I'm not going to don't give any advertisements for anybody, but in the last 2 years, there are close to 2,000 articles on heart rate variability. And if I hooked you up, and I'll show you a tracing of mine on a particular day, but when you're frustrated, anxious, worried, irritated, your heart beats in an irregular pattern. There's no rhythmic pattern to it. So it's very very different when you're experiencing appreciation, love, care, and renewing positive emotions. The pattern becomes much more regular. And again, without getting into a lot of some of the science behind it, but this is a tracing that I did on myself. My partner had been diagnosed with stage 4 cancer that day and was starting chemotherapy. And so a lot going on, right? A lot of fear, a lot of anxiety, very, very tough day. And I often have this connected to my computer in my office. I still had things to do, right? We all have stuff to do in the midst. We still have to pay bills. We still have to go grocery store. We still have stuff to do in the setting of really difficult times. And right where that yellow dot is, the shift, everything to the right is what happened to my heart pattern when I started practicing gratitude and appreciation for the healthcare physicians. I went through everybody I could think of, the chemotherapy nurses, the radiology techs, the phlebotomists. I all extended my gratitude and appreciation to them. And I just tell you, again, this is anecdotal. This is me. This is not a big research study. But the calmness, the clarity, everything that I could then problem solve and get through came to me in that experience, right? And I'm confident. That would have been really strange to have this during my mom's stay in hospice, right? But I'm convinced that the same process was going on. And again, you look at the date here, this is really old, but this is what generated my interest. And this was looking at individuals with congestive heart failure. And the individuals in the treatment group, the dark bar on the side there, those are the individuals. They're looking at taking a look at and surveying them for stress after they initiated this mindfulness-based interventions. They looked at stress. They looked at depression, the treatment group. Depression dropped, feelings of stress. And then they looked at functional capacity, and this is the ability for somebody with congestive heart failure to walk further, to engage in more activity. Their functional capacity increased just by practicing some mindfulness-based interventions. Fast forward 20 years, there's a lot more of this type of research that people looked at, but unfortunately it's still really small. And again, this is what happens. You can see what happens to cortisol in a group after they practice, and a beneficial hormone that I really won't get into. So just take a look at that picture. It's beautiful, right? I mean, it's just, it captures what that early morning looks like in Door County. So again, I talked about this in the beginning. Whenever you're practicing mindfulness and you feel like, oh, it's just not working, I'm still stressed, you just begin again. You just start over. And the wonderful thing about to begin again is really it's the basis for forgiveness too, right? Forgiveness is about beginning again. And so if you're in a particular difficult spot with somebody in the family, again, one of the ways to maybe overcome that, I often see I'm kind of amazed at the number of clients now who have fractured relationships in families. I had one in one of my family, particularly a younger brother. After my mom passed, all sorts of stuff happens that you would never anticipate, right? But doing this kind of mindfulness, being aware of what your feelings are, asking yourself, can I begin again, may lead to reconciliation, which is always the hope, right? So I think the thing here is, again, we wake up in the morning, we're only allowed so much energy. Right? There are only so many neurotransmitters, and it's easy to use them worrying about tomorrow and feeling bad about yesterday. It may not feel like it, but if you're ruminating, I would have, if only I had, I should have, I could have, I would have. If you play that game, stuck in the past, you're burning energy. Your brain is using resources that are better used for something else. And does ruminating in the past serve you? Right? Does it serve you? Does it serve your family? Likewise, projecting your fears into the future. Is that serving you? I have a client who is having an upcoming surgery, and I think, again, I push to have prehab, physical therapy before surgery. Really common with knee replacements, right? But I spent a month before surgery helping that individual a lot of fear around major going on anesthesia. And so for a month before, we practiced. As you're getting ready for this, as you're doing your mindfulness intervention, your mindfulness-based therapy, I want you to project your gratitude and appreciation to the surgeon, to the anesthesia tech, to the hospital. In all the ways that you can think of, I want you to see if you can develop a sincere feeling of gratitude and appreciation for the people that are going to be taking care of you. This isn't about you. This is about the other people and extending that out. And she told me afterwards, and again, this is anecdotal, but she told me that was incredibly beneficial as they were wheeling her to the OR, the last thing she was thinking about. And she was telling the techs, thank you, right? It takes us out of ourself, it takes us out of our mind, and puts us in a much better place. Again, this is a view of Lake Michigan, walk the beach. And again, this is so important, this quality of being thankful, a readiness to show appreciation and to return kindness. I haven't updated again this in a long time. I'm a lot less interested, I think, in this. I was a skeptic, kind of a scientist. I think I don't need this as much as maybe as I did in the beginning. But again, these are some studies looking at the benefits of gratitude. Keeping a gratitude journal causes participants to report fewer physical symptoms, more time spent exercising, 10% less physical pain, 8%. So over and over again. But unfortunately, I mean, you look at the study numbers are small, and but you know, the thing is too, I come to realize this isn't anything new. People have been appreciative and practicing gratitude for millennia, right? I was on a panel. I went to an Alzheimer's Association event up in Northeast Wisconsin, and it was at the Menominee Nation, and they had a panel of elders there, and they were talking about how they're treated in the community and those kinds of things. And the individual was in her 70s, I believe, at that time, and she said she started her morning with her grandmother every day with a walk in the forest giving thanks, right? That tradition was passed down for generations and generations and generations, right? So this isn't I don't think I need any more science or any more studies to confirm what we collectively carry along in our culture. So again, just to highlight some of those. And I go to my family and family stories to help me with this. This is my uncle. He was born in 1910, and he told me that my grandfather left in the middle of the Depression, so left his wife and his 6 kids, just took off. And so my uncle was the oldest, and he started working loading boxcars with granite at 10 cents a ton. And he used that money to buy groceries at the company store for his siblings, and right. He went on to serve in the South Pacific and the Navy, became a teacher, became a superintendent of school districts. He's the first generation to go to college since Ferguson's got to America before the Revolutionary War, right? So I have a lot to be. Without him, who would have known what happened to my dad, right? So it's hard sometimes when I'm in a difficult situation. Sometimes it's very hard to find gratitude or appreciation in a difficult situation. It's not hard to think about him or anybody else. Mrs. Smith, my 3rd grade teacher, right? It's not hard to think of people in our life who we can find appreciation and gratitude for. And so when you're finding your personal situation difficult, turning to your family history, turning to other people in the community that are inspirations for you, and finding gratitude and appreciation in those folks and the work that they're doing can be beneficial. So we're going to go through this again one more time. I think we have some time. We're going to close your eyes again. And I start off the same every time. It becomes a pattern that is reliable for me. And again, it's practice. It's like practicing the piano or practicing a language. You have a formal practice so that when you go out into the real world, it bleeds in or helps you in the real world. So feel your feet on the floor, the pressure, the weight of your body sinking into the chair. You can hear some sounds in the room. Sound of my voice. As those thoughts come in, just let them pass. It's like a cloud across the sky or a ripple on a pond. Watch what happens to it. How long does it last? How long can you stay mad? A couple of deep breaths. Accentuating the out breath helps your heart and helps you drop your blood pressure a little more. As you sink into that pattern, again, you don't have to control your breath. It's going to come just follow it along through the inhale. You can even notice that little pause between inhale and exhale, the out breath. And that's really all you have to do. You don't have to go through a gratitude exercise or a kindness exercise. You can start off with that, and that may be all you can handle. Just to breathe, become aware. In this particular exercise, I would like you to try to think of somebody who has been or is important to you. Just feel how much you appreciate them in your life or what impact they had on you. Then imagine irradiating that feeling of gratitude or appreciation outward to them, really to everyone in this room today, to the people who put the conference on. Again, when a thought intrudes or something comes in, just let it pass. There's no reason to hang on to it, make a judgment about it. If you get off track, just begin again. Okay, a little abbreviated, but you can open your eyes. So we're going to try to stay on track today. We got to start stuff. But again, you can replace that appreciation, gratitude with other attitudes that you might want to focus on. So it has a lot of flexibility, a lot of things that you can do. We started off today really setting your intention. We came in, left everything at the side. This is really all just about paying attention to the moment right now. Not thinking about or not projecting, again, your fears or concerns into the future, and certainly not ruminating or thinking about the past, but paying attention to your thoughts, your feelings, your physical sensations as they're arising right now. And then we did some exercises too around changing the attitudes, which can be helpful. So again, when do you do this? You can apply this technique before you're going to have some difficult conversations. Maybe you need to have some conversations with family. And when I was in active practice, sometimes before I picked up the phone to call somebody, I would take a couple of minutes to get in the right frame, because it changes how you communicate people. People can hear in your voice, what's going on. You think you might have a poker face, but people can pick up what's going on, especially when people start developing cognitive impairment and dementia. Their emotional abilities, their ability to read faces, to know what mood you're in, is still there and still perceptive at times. They can pick up what's going on. So you have to be able to step away for 30 seconds, get yourself in a good place, and then come back, and it makes a huge difference. I had an individual I was helping who had developed psychosis, developed psychotic behaviors in an assisted living. They initially started some medication, which wasn't really a good idea. Moving that individual to a different community completely changed all those behaviors, right? So that had to do that was circumstantial. It had to do with the way they were being treated, the way they were being talked to, how much activities were going on there. All that had to be explored. Just go back real quick. When you can't sleep and you have racing thoughts flooding into your mind, I was talking to one of the physicians earlier about that. When you wake up at night, taking a little bit of time to go through the breathing exercises, we can do that. So I have some more examples in the handout, so you can take a look at when you might apply those. Getting a routine is really important, and I think one of the messages here for me too, I changed the slide, but it's just that we can learn new skills, particularly around mindfulness-based training, and emotional self-regulation is really vital. Our ability to change our mood is really important. And then finally, I'll leave you with this. It's one of my favorite quotes. I'll read it for you. Cultivate the habit of being grateful for every good thing that comes to you and to give thanks continuously. And because all things have contributed to your advancement, you should include all things in your gratitude, even the things that are challenging and tough for you. I think that is it. I don't think I have any more slides, so.